Okay. Um, it is 10 o'clock, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Want to give a couple people some reminders. Anybody who is here in person, please remember to scan the QR code because that's how you sign the blue sheet. Those of you who are remote, by joining the meeting, you uh, have been added to the blue sheet. Um, yes. So remote people, can you hear me? Now that I've tapped on the mic and blown out your ears. James, I see you remote. Can you hear? One of you could say something or tap.
Yeah, we can hear you. It's the volume's a little bit on the low side, but it's quite all right.
All right, I'll take my mic and my mask off for this and try to speak louder. Um, anyway, great. Also, as a reminder for folks in the room and remote, there is a way to join the queue. So just be sure to um, join the queue, and we'll go back and forth based on the queue as opposed to who's physically in the room. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. So we have a pretty, this is an official IETF meeting. The note well that you've been seeing in other meetings this week does apply. The, um, so now somebody that's remote needs to mute. Great, thank you. So the note well applies. A couple other things, if you are in the room, the IETF is requesting that everybody wear masks unless you're speaking at a microphone. And if you get close enough, sometimes that you can keep the masks on even for that. Um, I think that's Scribe. Then you're going to take notes, right, Dieter? Excellent. There is, if you join the notepad that's linked off of Data Tracker, you can contribute to the notes as we go along. We find that doing this online helps us get our minutes done in a much more timely manner. I know that I personally am responsible for several sets of late minutes, so that way we have a record of at least what we have. So feel free to contribute to the minutes as we go. The 114 meeting tips. I forgot that we added this. Here's your 114 meeting tips. In particular, there's the be sure to sign up, which we've already talked about. Use Meet Echo to join the mic queue. Keep your audio and video off if you're not using the on-site. If you're using the on-site, audio and video off if not using the on-site version. I don't think that's quite right, but
yeah, double negative.
Yeah, there's something wrong with that sentence. Wear masks, I've already talked about. Remote participants. Make sure your audio and video is off unless you're chairing or presenting or speaking in the queue. Feel free to turn on obviously your audio, but definitely your video as well if you wish for the queue. And use of a headset is strongly recommended. So here's our agenda for the day. This is our administrative and agenda bashing portion. We have a pretty light agenda. Dieter and I dropped the ball on scheduling our virtual interim that we were going to schedule about 3 or 4 weeks ago. And so we don't have some of the work queued up here for this meeting that we had hoped. But we do have a few things that we want to go ahead and get moving. And then we'll talk about scheduling virtual interims going forward. I'm going to preface it with we're thinking about trying to go ahead and have a standing virtual meeting every month. And that way we can schedule it if we can cancel it if we don't have work to do, but we're hoping that that'll keep us making some progress in a more timely manner. So Is there any agenda bashing, any additions, comments or additions to the agenda? Okay, great. Uh, so our working group status, uh, the Yang data model has been published. Thank you very much to everybody that was involved in all of that work, and in particular Dhruv, who really drove it over the finish line. Um, so that is completed. We have two documents currently in IESG stages, both interleave modes and the mode 6 commands. We're still working through those, and hopefully we will make some progress shortly on those. We've just issued a working group last call for the Kronos document. This was the working group last call. It was needed to have been issued a little bit earlier to have a conversation for this meeting, but that last call has been issued. I'd really like to remind working group members that when we issue a working group last call, it's much more helpful if people can review and comment on the mailing list about the document, even if the comment is, I think this is ready to be published, because we need to show consensus within the working group. This is a pretty small working group. It always has been a small working group. So we need to get those comments on the mailing list in a timely manner. And then we have two things that are waiting on Shepherd write-ups. The update registries, there was an update done um, earlier this week. So we agreed that at the last virtual interim, we agreed that the update registries had passed working group last call, and it was ready to pass on to the IESG. And Dieter did a review of it, and he asked for a few changes. And then the question came up about whether the document should be informational standards track. The document that it is updating is a standards track document. So we have decided to switch it from informational to standards track, and we're going to do a very short working group last call on that specific issue before we move it on to the IESG. Are there any questions or comments on that particular document and that plan of action? Nope. Okay. The next document that we have sitting in our Shepherd write-up status is the PTP Enterprise Profile. We have gotten approval from the IEEE to share the underlying specification for that for the purposes of the review of this document. We also have updated text. There is going to be a terminology issue with this document as we pass it through the IETF because it's based on the 1588 specification. 1588 specification uses language that will probably be problematic in the review. 1588 is based on the concept of master clocks and slave clocks. 1588 has an active PAR that is making progress that will address that issue. And so for the purposes of forwarding this document, we will be referencing that work. And then and noting that because of the IETF document reference is a representation or a profile of the 1588 specification, we will be using the language that's in the 1588 specification with the understanding that 1588 is updating that language because the core specification is under their change control, and our document is a profile of that document. So with those two issues resolved, we will be progressing that. So that is, any questions on that document? Okay. Can you? Oh, no, you can go ahead and come, just stand up.
Hi, this is Dennis Riley from Equinix. Since I also am on the 1588 committee and know a bit about that alternative terminology draft going forward, do I understand correctly that the current text still references the old language, and we're basically, as part of the write-up, going to say once the alternative terminology amendment gets approved, we'll just change it?
We're not committing to go back and update the document. What
Okay.
we're saying is that we're using the language that exists in the document that is currently published. We understand that that language is being updated, and we advise people that are implementing this to refer to the work of the 1588 to see what the updated language would be.
Okay, but the text of the draft we don't anticipate changing that
Well, my hope is that this is going to be published
before.
that uh, before that part is completed.
Okay,
So, I mean, we could hold it up, but I mean, this document has been held up for a long time for administrative and, I mean, not for this issue. It's been
Right.
held up for a long time just because we haven't gotten our act together and moved it on.
okay. I'm just asking so I understand what the implications are going forward. Thank you very much.
Right. That's the plan right now. The thing is that depending on how fast the 1588 stuff gets through and how fast this document gets through, if the timing works out, right now the timing looks like this will be done before that'll be done. So that's the plan right now. If this gets delayed and if the 1588 work picks up speed and moves right on through the process, then we can update this document. And it's even possible to update this document. You know, we can update it at a later RFC, but you know, we would need somebody to do the work. So I'm not committing to do that work yet. All right. Any additional questions on the enterprise profile work? Okay. So with that, moving back to the agenda, the next topic is the NTP v5 use cases and requirements document. James, I know you're online. Did you want to say anything about that document?
Yeah, I don't actually have a huge amount to say other than I've published a 00 for the working group, and really the only change that's been included in it is some editorial changes and nits that Paul Gear had submitted. I think in terms of what I plan on doing now is that I've got about half dozen issues and things that I think need to go into it, such as making references to other documents and clearing up some bits and pieces. It would be good if the working group could have a review at it and pick it to bits again. And then I think in the following interim meetings, I'll have further updates. And if there's any normative language that's particularly sticking, we can get consensus calls through those meetings.
Okay, thank you, James. Are there any questions or comments on the NTP v5 use cases and requirements document?
This is Dieter speaking. I have a question. There's this security requirements document from the TikTok working group, and I just wonder if did you consider the threat model which is described in this document when you formulated your section 5 of your document?
I did. I haven't looked at it yet. I wasn't aware of it. Could you send me a link or something, and I can include it?
Yes, that's RC 7384.
Yeah, that was the requirements document that was done prior to the development of NTS, and so that would be a good one to take a look at. Any other questions or comments on the use cases and requirements document? Okay. We have already covered the registry update draft. Rich, you don't have anything else on that, right? We've covered everything we need on that? No. Yep. So then we have a list of items where we haven't had any updates yet. The first one is rough time. We had optimistically thought we would do a hackathon effort on rough time at this IETF, but that didn't get pulled together in time. We've had no real updates to the document. Does anybody have anything? I'm not even, is any, oops, there's, if there's no, I don't believe, are there any comments or questions on rough time? I do think we're interested in getting some implementation experience on that. We have a little bit of time to plan for a potential hackathon effort in conjunction with IETF 115. And so we'll take a look for that. The next topic that we've had no updates on is NTPv5. I believe in last chatting with Miroslav, the thought was that once we had adopted the use case and requirements document, we could consider adopting his draft for NTPv5. Miroslav, do you have any comments on that document or your plans for that?
Yeah, I think there was some discussion on the mailing list about meeting those requirements, and since they don't seem to have changed significantly, maybe we can look at that again. I think most people seem to agree that the draft would meet those requirements, but there are some issues which I already forgot that would need to be explained, what is exactly meant and if this works.
Okay. James, go ahead.
I think I did some analysis based off of what Doug had provided, and I think there was only two or three things that were outstanding where the requirements didn't line up with the draft, your draft, but I think that was against the previous version. So maybe it would be an idea to just go through and recheck it, revalidate that, and we can talk about that on the list.
Okay. Miroslav, do you think it's worth doing the call for adoption now, or would you rather wait a little longer?
I'm not sure. What do you think is best?
What do I think is best? I think it probably go ahead and, I think we should go ahead and do the call for adoption. I mean, we've had it sitting there for a while. I'm sort of glancing at the AD to see if he's giving me a different indication. No, okay. Something from, oh, no. No, we don't need anything. I think we were just, I mean, this is NTPv5, so I don't see that we need, I think we should go ahead and get it in there. I think if they have the requirements document side by side with the actual protocol specification, then they'll be able to do a better analysis of how the requirements are translating into reality. So go ahead, James.
So I've dug up my old spreadsheet, and there is 5 things that are outstanding. 2 are unknowns, NAT support and repeat deployments, basically ossification, and the 3 that were not yet met were minimizing abuse, capability notifications, and connection reestablishment. With that, I don't think these are insurmountable, and I do the call for adoption, and we can work out these later, and use consensus calls to get them over the line.
Okay, I think we'll go ahead and proceed with the call for adoption of Miroslav's document for NTPv5. And that'll give us something concrete to work towards. The NTP over PTP document has been around for a little while. Miroslav, do you want to comment on what the next steps for that are?
I think this one could go to the call for adoption, and there will be some work needed. Recently, I saw some issues that could be related to the sequence ID in the PTP packet, and the current draft says it should be always 0, but that might be an issue with some specific drivers, so that would need to be addressed, I think.
Okay. I think to get better eyes on this, we should probably go ahead and do the call for adoption on this one as well. Is there anybody who disagrees with that? Okay. So the last work with no updates is NTS for PTP. The status of that work is we had 2 different proposals on the table, and the primary advocates of each of those 2 proposals were going to get together and see if they could merge those into a single approach. That has not been done yet, and so I think we're kind of waiting on seeing how the primary advocates for that work how that ends up falling out. In the meantime, one of the authors is finishing up a graduate degree, so this could take a little bit of time. I don't see any of the primary authors online. Is there anybody here who can speak to the status of that effort? No. Okay, so that brings us to the end of our agenda. So do we have any other updates? Any other business that we wish to bring up? Go ahead, Miroslav.
Yeah, I would like to ask, and this might be a bit controversial, for NTPv5, if it would make sense to support as a new timescale local time. I've seen some users using modified NTP, and instead of UTC, they use local time, and this greatly simplifies the client's logic in some small embedded computers. And I was wondering if this is something that should be supported in NTP5 or not. Just some ideas.
Anybody want to touch that one? Go ahead, James.
I would say let's take this one to the list. It would be good to understand more about the rationale.
Okay. Dennis?
So I think it's definitely something that we should talk about. It's worth discussing. I think we need to understand all the different use cases that might be involved. I can certainly understand, for instance, wanting to run a bunch of clocks off of NTP and have those clocks show the local time, but there's more than one way to do that. And I won't elaborate right now, but it's definitely worth discussing in the context of NTBV5, things like, do we ever want to transmit the time on the wire in a different time scale? Or is it sufficient to just include some fields that tell end devices what the local time is? There are a lot of things we can do. It's worth discussing. And I guess that's it.
Yeah. I saw somebody pop into the queue and then back out. Is there anybody else that wanted to comment on this topic? Oh, okay. So Miroslav, if you could start an email thread on the NTP mailing list with the subject line that clearly caught people's attention that this is what we were talking about, you know, something like alternative timescale for NTP, then we could have the discussion there. Is that okay?
Okay, thanks.
All right. Any other business? Okay, so to wrap up, we do plan, as I mentioned earlier, we plan to try to do a virtual interim once a month moving forward. I think we need to look towards a rough time hackathon effort in November. And based on how the next few months worth of virtual meetings go, we will decide whether or not to request agenda time for IETF 115 or not. I think one of the keys is that this agenda time is pretty valuable. And so I know that I personally feel really guilty about having a 30-minute meeting in a 2-hour time slot here. So any other business? With that, everybody have a lovely day. Thank you. Oh, wait, hold on a second. I don't know that we have the right people in the room to answer. The question is, do people want to meet at 1:15? And I guess my concern is there's a number of regular participants who are not here. So I'd rather ask that question. I feel like we didn't tee up enough conversations to attract the people that normally participate. And then the other thing that happened was we scheduled, I didn't even think of the conflict, but we are exactly conflicting with the IEEE 1588 plenary, which happens once a month at 10 a.m. on Wednesdays. And so some of our virtual participants are also there. So if I'd paid more attention to it's only like once a month. It just so happens, you know, what's the chances? So that was a schedule conflict that was unfortunate. So with that, is there any other business? And we, as I said, we'll decide about 115 in a couple of months once we see if we're getting a fair amount of work towards progress on these drafts. Thank you, everybody, and have a good day. assume. Do you agree?
Yes, but I think one of Ben's points was that he found some like 20 versus 24-bit actual like code inconsistency. Just technically not a security issue, or maybe it is a security issue. I don't know. Might be incorrect on that point.
Right.
When the historic document just said this could be more text like this. For whatever reason. Every time writes. Oh, and start that. Oh, Brian, just you know, purpose. Yeah, you create I don't know if it's the same thing. So it must work with that. Yeah, sorry, I'm just speaking about state back in. One of your practical bits of info. Yeah. I think just it seems fair to talk to policy courtesy. The other side has already cleared his issues, right? So just give him a chance and then
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that.
records straight to.
I had 2 meetings on this session, so it's actually working kind of well. And you'll fix some MDSS.
Oh, yeah, it should be.
Oh, okay.
I'm sorry.
Oh, good. Well, that's good.
You know, I need to fix it. No, it came up a week ago and it's just not clear that it is. Oh, yeah, I haven't actually posted that. We did sign the contract.
Of course.
So, and it's that. The only thing that is a little bit unclear is, so it's the 27th of February to the 3rd of March.
Oh,
Now,
that's good. Quite
wasn't a big deal before you had a big AV set up for the rooms.
Right.
But we didn't get rooms until late in Saturday.
Oh, wait, that's okay. Oh, wait, that's
Yeah. And so I felt like we put in some things they weren't those Saturdays. So that we were able to get Sunday to Saturday or Monday to Friday.
Oh, okay.
So you have a week, but how much days?
Right. Like you could do the classes like Monday and Friday, but maybe it would be better to actually.
Right, so we could do it Monday, Friday, or maybe we could do Monday, Tuesday,
Oh,
workshops.
yeah.
We just need to brainstorm.
All right, this is session. Well, good. Can we?
Sorry.
That's good. I'm glad you were able to secure it. And have it. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right, I didn't get that up on the website.
So, helping other people organize success.
I mean, part of me is, the program committee as well, and that's in control of it.
Oh, yeah.
In my mind, well, it's out there, but you're right, I never asked the dates.
Yeah.
And I was reluctant to do it until we just.
Oh, no, that would, yeah, that would make sense. And even the server ones. I mean, I'm just curious, but people are not taking that.
Well, people are starting to budget.